Hi, I'm Diane, founder of Oxpops International, and I'd like to introduce you to our podcast series, Expert Voices. During this season, I'll be chatting to research professionals and leaders in their field about how they use and how they integrate insights, video and strategy in order to get great cut-through in their companies. In this episode, we're chatting with Andrew Riungu, a marketing researcher at Meta. I'd just like to say welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's okay. So obviously you're a key figure in market research. What would be really great to begin with is just to talk us through your journey. How did you get here? How did you start?
Okay. I think with everyone in market research, I stumbled into it. I don't think I set my eyes on ever being in market research. It was in uni. I was in my final year and I wanted to get a serious job after being a bartender for a while. And someone asked me if I would consider doing telephone interviews as a part-time gig. It was different because it was not going to be late at night. I started working nights and with shift work in bars. So I thought, okay, a day job and I can transition my way into getting a serious job is what I told myself. And I kind of liked it. I liked interviewing people. I liked listening to what people had to say. I was curious, what happens to all this data we collect, all this information? Where does it go? I guess from there, my curiosity led me talking to the CEO and asking him, hey, could I, and he explained to me how everything works and how they start the whole process and how the whole research is started from the briefing to the collection and the analysis and all that. And I was like, oh, I'd like to understand that. And he offered me a position to project manage. So I started Coalface, and that was back in Australia, in Sydney. It's been over, I think, 15 years now, and I'm here in London now, my experience.
So have you been mainly on qualitative research or working quantitative?
I started doing both, actually. I started doing both, but largely on quant. I was largely collecting and measuring. It was from a collecting data point of view and also analyzing it. I got bored because after a point, numbers, there's only so much numbers to tell you. There's no intrigue behind numbers. It's 50%, 50%. Whereas I think emotion was always something that I found was really keen, when people tell you what they don't tell you. So I moved now more into qualitative research after about 4.5 years of doing a lot of quant. And I stayed with qual for a while. And qual sort of became the thing I loved, but I can do quant, but I think I do gravitate towards emotion, towards people, towards chatting. So qual to me feels like it's the heart of all insight, and quant just allows you to measure.
So do you think it's changed a lot from when you first started, like the research industry and the methodologies?
Yeah, it has.
It's all done.
It definitely has. When I started, there was paper. You were ticking off stuff. I mean, Cappy was just coming up. Catty was new up coming. Changed from data quality, being able to manage data quality, methodologies with reliance. I think back in the day, there was a strong reliance and you had to have a huge sample size to be able to show that you've really done research. I think now we flag that it's indicative. The industry is changing in terms of adopting best case scenarios. I think research has always been traditionally thought as it should be the decider of all, but now we're finding research more as an enabler, sometimes as even an enabler to guide good decisions, or an enabler to tell us we'd made a bad decision, as well as guide and tell you this was a bad decision we made. So I think it's changing, and the impact that insights or research is having in organizations is coming up. It's actually being identified as a core need for the business moving forward.
Do you think insight has a more pivotal role now than it used to?
It depends on what. I always say that marketing insights pivotal role. I think what you're seeing more and more now is insight professionals and they are changing to sort of to be a mix of strategists, marketers, and also researchers at the same time. But their mainstay being research by value of having understanding how consumers see things, being at the coalface of the insight professionals have been asked to come in at various levels of the journey. Whether you choose to accept that, I always say it's up to individual levels. Like I know a colleague of mine who really does not enjoy creative, or doesn't feel like they're very good at criticizing creative or offering critique on creative. So they don't mind being in the meeting, but they won't say much. Whereas I love creative. I love giving feedback on creative. I love giving feedback on media. I love seeing how media is there. So it depends, but I do think just because you you've got a whole understanding from the consumer up until that point of execution. There's certain milestones where insights are needed to offer guidance and to offer suggestions.
Yeah, completely agree. Do you think, so with insight, in my experience, what's happened over the years is that there was always a problem with key stakeholders actually taking it on board or getting cut through with it and then having actions come out of that. Has that changed, do you think? Or how has it changed?
I guess it depends on the market and the level of interest. So in Australia, I felt that every time I would do research, you'd present it and then sometimes decisions would not take us fast to execute. I think there was a lot of, it took a lot to travel up the chain. That was back in the day. I remember when I now decided to say, okay, let me try doing research in Africa. We would give a report today, in 2 weeks, whatever you recommended is up to, it's a marketing campaign or it's a billboard, it's something like they acted on it immediately. Like we were partners. But I think it's also a factor of how well do you unearth the insight. I think what I've seen a lot nowadays, and I'm seeing a lot of, is a lot of fluff, a lot of good written words, but not much substance. And that struggles to go up the chain. I think what really goes is clear, impactful. It's going to do this, it's going to do this. And I think what researchers that have been able to move up the chain as researchers that have done that. When I've seen research not going anywhere, it's two things. Either it wasn't a business priority or it just didn't give anything compelling. It's either one of those two things. Now, business priority, you can't blame research. Compelling, you can blame the researcher. Like, you didn't show a compelling story.
So that leads me nicely into... You've used video, or you've been sort of an advocate for using video in research. Can you talk me through sort of like when you first started using video and how that helped and why you chose it?
Oh yeah, video is always a great way to reinforce quantitative sentiments. Quantitative data is kind of like, God, why did consumption of biscuits drop by 10%? And you're like, oh, and the client's like, no, it can't be. We had a new packaging. We did this. There's got to be a reason why. And you're like, okay. Sometimes you're trying to, it's just seasonal. Sometimes people maybe just had a bad day when they're filling in that survey. Let's track it. Anyway, the video is always a great way of either validating that hypothesis or nullifying it. In many instances, video usually, because it's raw sentiment and it's just based on, this is just a dipstick. We're just trying to get a dip in time, a moment. It's really, really helpful. That's how I started. And it was called Vox Pops, and what you guys are called. So that's what they were called. Vox Pops were always used to try and they're always used to reinforce quant data. They were never used as standalone deliverables. But now we've seen moving forward that as executives struggle and death by PowerPoint being something that a lot of researchers have not been able to overcome, video really helps land the message much quicker and saves you the time if you're a nervous presenter presenting.
Can you talk me through any projects that you've done?
One that works clearly of mine that I first did, which I think that I'm proud of, and I think was with you, was Vox Pops, was one we did with my previous employer called Safaricom. And we were pretty much just trying to show the board the opportunity of harnessing the power of our data. It was a telco company. It's grown really fast. It's been one of the biggest. How do you then show that the power of your data is what you can use to influence things moving forward? So there was various main things that we're trying to show them in terms of by understanding our data, because all we had was just data. But the data was, if I could explain it, it was data that was in our library with all the books falling on the floor. And you had to now rearrange, like, where does this mean? Where does this mean? So video helps show how clank it is, but also the possibilities that exist with the data we have. And that's what we're able to unlock. And I think because of that, the board agreed to focus more. And that was about 3.5 years ago. The board is now, through that, the board agreed to focus on data analytics, data analysis, and that's actually become a big arm in the business now in terms of how they reference it. And that was all because of a video. Again, okay, let me not say it because of a video. I'm sure they also knew that, but the video just nudged them further.
So you moved from Safari, came over here.
Safaricom to Meta, to London. I was moved to London. So as a researcher, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the company, I'm just speaking of what I do. I am... The guide I'm meant to do is to help shape, incubate, and scale marketing strategies across our international markets for Meta. Now, within that, if you consider Facebook's usership, which is quite broad, or Meta's usership, it's quite broad, there's a lot of nuggets that sometimes get lost in the data, and it's a company that is really data-driven. Where is the data? Show me the data. Show me the data. Show me the sentiment. It's a very data-driven organization. So coming to that, I would say video is more or less used to reinforce a community story. Because we're all about the community, we're all about giving part to the community. I'm still trying to see if the video can be used to tell insightful data stories. I just think by virtue of where we are, it might come, but I think you have a lot of people who are still stuck on showing traditional numbers, the traditional set in a file, and it's read out and you can see we increased by X%. And that's still there, but I think it would be so good to see how that can be translated into video, because I think there's a lot more. But again, maybe there's issues of, it's sensitive data and we don't want people to know about it. So, and we don't have an in-house capability, so better do it in a PPT. I don't know, but those are just my guesses.
Sort of having worked in different countries, what have been your main challenges in terms of adapting and understanding different cultures? Has it been really different sort of doing research in, say, Australia to Africa to the UK?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, I think it would, and we'd expect it to be different, right? It's two things. Friendliness from your respondents, cultural norms. So, for instance, when you're interviewing in places like in India, in Africa, even in the Middle East, if the interview is for an hour and you end up talking for 2 hours, they won't kick you away. See, there's a group, like if a group starts late and it ends up going longer than what was planned, people are very egalitarian with their time. They're very friendly. They will tell you, okay, I will share my time, then I'll share my opinions with you, and once you feel satisfied, I'll leave you. And sometimes what happens when you travel, when you take a contingent of a Western team who are used to it's time, you feel that even though you're trying to be respectful to show that, we don't want to keep you here, but it might just come across as disrespectful, because they might think, why are you in such a rush to leave my presence when I have invited you to my presence? So trying to get people to understand, when we're in people's presence, let's take it all in. Let's not be truly trying to rush our agenda. On the other hand, on the flip side, you do research in Western markets, in Australia, UK, the US, and you find, especially the UK, a lot of cynicism. People are quite cynical, and you're not sure, is this a true response or is not? And so how do you split out what is really true? And then, of course, they're more reactive. They've also got, I call them weird. They're Western, they're educated, they're industrialized, they're rich, they're democratic. So I think they have a lot of, sometimes I feel, when I compare the two, I feel when you do research in countries that are non-Western or non-weird, you tend to appreciate the value of what products and marketing does. And when you do research in Westernized markets, you get to realize how spoiled humanity can be. So I see it in both ways.
That's such a great name, though. Weird. I'm going to remember.
Weird, yeah. I
don't know if anyone else uses.
They do. It's behavioral psychology.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. That's really cool. Tell me, working with Meta, how does such a big company understand the individual markets and individual consumers?
Well, there's a lot of data. First of all, we have a lot of data. But there's some data which we don't have as well, and a lot of that is how people are feeling about us being with them, about our vision, and I guess what's more intimate, especially when we talk to, what's more important is when you talk about an audience like content creators or influencers that are available on our platforms. How do you engage them to be able to become, I guess for them to see value in spending more time creating content on your platforms? Because you've got to understand that right now the game has become the social media game is not what it was 10 years ago. With the Facebook-like company, video can be, with Meta, I keep saying Facebook, with Meta, what I've noticed is you've got to be I think you've really got to understand how to use video. Video has been traditionally known to be hard, because how do you ensure you sell it and you sell it in the right way? Now, with I think we tried one when we're trying to highlight how the impact we can have based on a campaign we did in Nigeria about the Metaverse. What's great is that the video was able to highlight raw feedback from the creators, especially when it comes to about positivity for the brand. Because when it comes to people saying, we like Facebook, it's amazing when you speak in the US and also the UK, people are like, how do you love our brand. But in other places like Nigeria and other places in Africa, there's a lot of love, and I think we see it and we feel it. So from my perspective, I think if we take that as an example, like how do you tell a story of empowering a community to show value of your product or of your services or of your tech? And that's what we're able to unlock with video sometimes, and most times we're able to unlock with other video partners a community story that shows how definitely our apps are enriching society and enriching the world and actually making the world a better place, not a bad place.
Going back to influencers, how important do you think is the influencer culture to research?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. First of all, I think you've got to understand what research, actually it's all UXR, marketing research. I think an interesting stat I stumbled on was about, I believe it was an EMEA. I think about 30% of the budget or 25% of the budget of their budget is on influencers, of their marketing budget is spent on influencer content or content creators. Content creators are big, especially when you think of what we're seeing in this with Afrobeat from Nigeria, Amapiano in South Africa. What I am seeing is that as researchers, how are we harnessing these folks to be able, because they're always on the ground, they know what's up, they're setting following trends, or they're part of emerging culture, they're keeping things going and they're part of what's going on. How do we plug into them so that we're not far from behind? And I think what we've realized is that a lot of the opinions they hold are of a majority. So they're able to really, from a research perspective, I feel speaking to an influencer or creator, I feel like I've spoken to 50 people. That representation. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but that's sort of, I'm trying to give you the magnitude of value they represent in their opinions that you can be able to take on.
So what do you know about the different types of video that people are using in the research industry? So for example, when I first started off doing video, I used to get this all the time. Oh, it's not real research. Talking to people on camera, they possibly tell you how they're really feeling because they've got a camera in front of them and all the rest of it. And we started off doing vox pops, and then we introduced video diaries, and then we've done all sorts of different things like segmentation videos and all kinds of stuff. What do you know about the different types of video technology methodologies in research?
I do like storytelling videos, so taking data storytell. I think there's a key there. But do I have a preference? I don't think I've done enough to say I have a preference. That's to be fair. I think I'm always open to trying new things, and I'm always open to what's there, what can we do differently. I'll be honest, yes. I like how we've progressed from just put people on the camera and ask them random questions and saying, yes, that's it. I think video is doing well of showing trends, and I think when you have video footage and trends, you're able to start saying, when we asked the same question 10 years ago, this was the answer, and there's a way you can be able to dramatize the effect with video. And I think that's what we need to get better of us, because I think especially if we're trying to influence marketers, influence leaders, I feel business leaders need a little bit of some drama to feel like, oh, okay, I think we should act. So how do you dramatize it? With a little bit of drama. Everyone knows like a little bit of some drama. So how do you dramatize? Video can do well to dramatize, but I think sometimes maybe we go back to just being very factual. Again, because of the bad flag we've got that this is not research. So you're trying to be very factual, but I think there's room to be playful and a bit more, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Are there agencies out there who say contact the influencers and say, right, go and give them a research brief of such?
There used to be. I've seen them. Because to do this, you've had to. It's tricky because one, influencers, content creators, they're not going to do anything unless you pay them, right? So a lot of the time, what's happening is you're picking young people who may be connected to some of this and trying to use them to gain their connection to talk to them. The key thing here is how do we ensure that we can partner with all of them? Creators can pass on a message better than you can pass it on. Creators can make the message believable better than you can make it believable. Now, there's a caveat. Yes, they've been paid to do it, and they've been paid to ask for it. As a researcher, you're paying consumers to come and give you opinions. I don't think there's a problem paying as an incentive to listen to opinions of a creator. I think there's a lot, much more richness in that, because it also helps you to understand where their mindset at, and you're able also to unlock unmet needs through them. And unmet needs for a creator can unlock unmet needs for hundreds, thousands. I don't know. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, fantastic. Let's have a chat about VR and the role of VR in research. What's your take on that?
It's too early to tell. I remember when SMSs blew up, and I was like, SMSs, this should be the great way to get feedback. And I keep reminding people, people use SMSs because I want SMS people I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to a brand that texts me just because I like chatting on what. And that's what I'm saying. I'm just because you've seen a pattern of behavior doesn't mean that pattern of behavior will match to your intended outcome, which is to fill out a survey. So everyone's asking, okay, does that mean research will now move fully VR? I don't think so. I think what it'll do, it will enable us to reach more audiences that we were leaving out. But will it fully replace? You can replace this. And this is what the whole thing about the Metaverse is, and even what Meta says is it's additive. It's not meant to replace. So VR in itself is meant to be additive. There's a lot of stuff we can be able to do in VR and make people feel more comfortable in time. Like being able to sketch out stuff like for instance, you could have done this meeting in VR and I wouldn't have to travel across town. And so there's a lot of things that would happen. We'd be able to say that and we'd be able to do things. And by that time, the tech would have been so great that it will feel like we're just in this room again, in my own space. Or even you could do it with our AR glasses. By the way, I'm wearing the Ray-Ban stories. So we could be doing the AR glasses where you come and appear with me as a projection in front of me and I'm doing the survey with you at my home, and you could be in Barbados and we could be doing this. The possibilities are endless. It's just what our minds want it to be.
Agreed. So where do you see research and video going for yourself in the next sort of like 5 years?
In the Metaverse.
Of course.
That's where I see it. I think it's really interesting. I see there's a lot of potential for video. When you start talking about the future and start seeing in terms of how do you then start integrating all this embodiment into a video? Like how do you start using video to show the, I mean, this is me speedballing, but the possibilities in 5 years will be different in terms of the tech that will be then. How do you infuse that tech into video? Tech like immersion, tech like ephemerality, being able to see it and see it once. Like how does video be able to show that? I mean, there's when you talk about expression, video being able to harness expression, how does that translate into a video world? Like I think video, how do we then do this podcast in the Metaverse, for an example? Like how do we then show that? Is that possible? I don't know. I think my view has always been video is always, for insights, has always been limited by the insights professionals. So based on what you create, and that's based on the creativity. So I feel video can go as far as your mind can take it to be, and can be as ineffective as your mind wants it to be.
I so agree with that, because we've had a few clients over the years who have always embraced a new way of doing things. So we've worked with Sky quite a lot, and as soon as we introduced 360 filming, they were, oh, yeah, let's give it a go. And then we did interactive video. They were like, oh, yeah, let's have a go with this, you know. So, but there are a lot of companies who literally, they will still come to us, I shouldn't say this, and they'll say, oh, I've thought about using box pops and it's a new way of doing things. I'm thinking, I've been doing it for like 30 odd years. Okay, it's new. But that's fine.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a spectrum from where people start off using video, where they can end up and where their imaginations can take them. So yeah.
And you can always guide them. And I think you guys as Voxers can always guide us because you're part of the industry. I'm always keen to see how video companies like VovSwap are leveraging the new tech that's coming up to be able to and again, how does it become an additive experience rather than a replacing experience? Because that's what we're looking for. And video so far has been additive. So how do you maintain it? I think where video loses, we try and, this sounds bad, we try and move away from our place and start saying, no, we can be additive, but now we can be more. Video is great when it's additive, and we shouldn't try to jump our guns and start saying, no, we can be more than additive. We can be the full story.
So on that, you see, I think what happens quite a lot is a lot of more traditional insight departments don't necessarily get the budget, and they won't, so say they've got, I don't know, 100 grand to do a research project or whatever, they won't actually say, okay, I'm going to spend 10% on the communication of this.
Yeah.
They'll just say, no, that's all got to go to, finding respondents, or I don't know, whatever.
I agree. You're right. And I'll tell you why. And when I dig deep, even my own boss, video is hard. Video just requires a lot of time for them to sit down, to edit through, to look through, okay, can I see this frames? I'm sure Pete can tell you how much time he's been back and forth. And that's the problem. And then when you have a lot of people, so some market researchers say, geez, I don't want the hustle, man. Let me just deal with getting the readout or the report. And then with this, because I'm going to spend, and to be honest, sometimes they don't know. I'll be honest. What I was looking at what I was looking at for the first video I ever did is different to what I look at now. Like the things I'm looking at and the tone. I didn't know then. So how do you build that muscle, or how do you outsource yourself to be that muscle?
So yeah, Drew, how are you using the metaverse in doing your research?
I'm not. We're still building it. It's still been built. I'm not using it. I'm not. I'd be lying to say if I am. What we are pioneering is being able to, and we'll see this then, is being able to, how do you get feedback through a VR experience, through an immersive experience? How does that work? I think in a device, it's clear to get a prompt. When you're at a store, they'll give you a paper or an email will be sent to you to get feedback. How do you do when you're immersed? Especially when we're trying to show that your data is secure. It's not that your data is stored elsewhere, it's only stored on the device. So how do you ensure you're able to get feedback, but being able to ensure privacy and all those things that are concerned are there? So short answer is nothing, because right now there's a lot of things we're building to try and get right to even allow that to happen. Anyone who says they're doing research, I don't even know what that means. I mean, you could probably moderate a session, and that's where I see it. But we could moderate sessions in the metaverse as research. Not yet there.
Okay.
Not yet there. But we're building to it.
Yeah, that would be really good to keep in touch with that, actually.
Yeah.
Drew, thank you so much for coming along today.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
I really, really, really appreciate it. It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.